Hello and welcome everyone to our webinar tonight. We are so happy to be able to provide this for those of you who are wondering about Match, trying to figure out how the process works now that we're in phase two and going into post-match for some people also is a possibility. So we wanted to speak on both phase two and the post-match vacancy service. So my name is Dr. Courtney Ray. I am the president of the Society for Black Neuropsychology, and it is my pleasure to be able to welcome all of you, whether you are members of SBN or not. We hope that you will be members of SBN, regardless of what level of career training you're in. We want you to know that you are welcome, no matter what background you're from. You are welcome to be a part of this organization. I'm so happy that I'm not the only person who is here to be able to talk to you today, but I have an illustrious panel of individuals who will be talking to you about their experiences with the match and just the emotions that came with that, as well as some very knowledgeable experts who will give you information about how the match actually works. So not just dealing with the emotional part, but also giving you some very practical steps of what to do now. We have individuals here who themselves have all gone through the match. We have all been where you guys are in terms of trying to fill out those applications, figuring out what your next steps are, things like that. And it can be really nerve-wracking already in phase one. But once you get to this place in phase two, that is even more nerve-wracking and challenging. And I also just want you guys to know that there are lots and lots of people who are successful psychologists, successful clinicians, successful professionals in neuropsychology who have been in phase two, who went to post-vacancy match. And for me, that's something that has happened even in my career. When I was in my graduate career, I had to go from phase one to phase two to post-vacancy. And it was really weird to try to figure out, okay, what should I do next? Because I knew what my career plan was. I wanted to be a neuropsychologist. So I wanted to figure out, okay, now how do I maneuver? Should I just take any place? Should I go to an APIC accredited site that wasn't necessarily APA accredited? I did have individuals who were saying, hey, we want you to come and be a part of this. I know that people aren't supposed to tell you that, but sometimes they do it anyway. That's just the reality of it. And you know, there were things that for me, I knew that I couldn't, because of different obligations, travel across the country. I knew friends who went as far as Hawaii. I had friends who went to Alaska, but for me, I was very geographically locked. And so that meant that my pool of choices was very, very limited. So I needed to figure out what was the primary thing that I wanted to do. So we have other individuals, like I said, who will be sharing their personal experiences. And also we will have individuals who will be sharing their professional opinions and professional expertise about how the match works and what you should do now that you're in this phase, and how that will affect your career going forward if you make certain choices. Because after all, we don't want you to go into this blindly or without any kind of guidance. We want all of you guys out there who are watching to know exactly what the ramifications of different choices are and how you can make this time work for you. So I have not only the pleasure of being able to host this for SBN, but SBN is working in coordination with ANST. And so we're happy to have Dr. Costello, who is going to be joining us and talking about her experiences. She is a representative from ANST who's going to come and tell us about just some of the things that she has felt, some of the things she might have heard from trainees. And Dr. Costello, go ahead and can you give us some information? First of all, we talked privately, right? Mm-hmm. And we talked about just our own personal experiences with the match. And so when you were going through the match, how was it for you?
Yeah, so I, full disclosure, did not match my first time applying to internship, which I'm sharing because I think it's something that I would have liked to hear more from people, just kind of sharing those experiences. It was really, really difficult emotionally and could be hard to kind of behaviorally activate yourself to then move into the next steps of what you need to do. So just want to kind of offer that and validate that it is a really challenging position to be in. And I'm happy to share, any of my insight or experiences in a way that's helpful to other people. Also just want to say that, grad students are high achieving people. We have high expectations for ourselves. And so I think something like this can feel like a loss of control or can feel like a failure. And it does not invalidate all of the work that you've put to get to this point. So just keep telling yourself that.
Exactly. And for many people, I'm sure that this was probably the first time that they didn't get something that they went for, that they applied for, because that in and of itself is something that you kind of think, well, everything has been good for me so far. Like you said, if you're going into clinical psychology as a doctoral student in general, and then if you're trying to do neuropsychology specifically, then yeah, you definitely are a high achieving person. You are used to doing things and getting the things that you work hard for, and it might be disappointing that this didn't work out. So that is a real thing. There are people that I will tell you run some departments, run some very well-known neuropsychological centers around this country who did not match in phase 1. And there are people who didn't match in phase 2, and they are just proficient in their field right now. It's not my story to tell, so I'm not going to tell their stories, but I can tell you at least 5 different people that I know who if I told you their names, you'd be like, what? That is so crazy. And the thing is that, like you said, we don't necessarily talk about it because we think that, oh, if this person has achieved this, then they must never have had any kind of setbacks. And this is all it is. It's a setback if you were not matched in phase 1. This is just one thing that you will have to overcome. It's an obstacle, but hopefully you'll be able to get through it with some of the things that we're going to talk about this evening. So Dr. Costello, can you tell us who you are? What do you do? I mean, you're not wallowing in anything. you didn't match in phase 1, but here you are. You're a successful clinical neuropsychologist.
Thank you for saying that. So I ended up completing my internship at University of Minnesota. I'm currently a first-year fellow at Baylor College of Medicine / Texas Children's Hospital, and I am also newly the Equity and Inclusion Officer for ANST. So here, kind of representing ANST in that capacity.
Awesome. And so the reason why we even decided that this was something that we wanted to share with students was because some of us were in a conversation. This is so that you guys who are in the audience know, we talked about the fact that when we were going through this as grad students, it was really a bit discombobulating, like we've said, and we didn't really know what we should do next. And so, like I said, this happens at Match for Internship. It also sometimes happens for different people for Match for Fellowship. We're going to be doing a webinar about that on Sunday. So if you know somebody who didn't match for a postdoc fellowship, let them know that they are welcome to watch on Sunday when we give tips for them. But I just want to normalize the feelings that you might have. If you might be feeling discouraged right now, if you might be feeling deflated right now, that's fine. It's normal to feel that way. And also, we still got to get through phase 2. we still have some more to do. So I want you guys to know that even though it is something that can be a little bit rough right now that you might be feeling, this does not mean that this is the end of the road for you. There's so much more that you can do, and that we know that you will do. The imbalance of the match is such that there are hundreds of people, good students, qualified people, excellent at what they do, but there just aren't enough slots. And because of that, good, qualified, hardworking students don't make it because they just don't have the numbers to match everybody up. And so that sometimes is more imbalanced in some years and less imbalanced in other years. But know that this happens often, but don't make it a reflection on you. Don't internalize that to mean that you aren't good enough. Don't think that this is because of something that says that you aren't able to make it. That's not what this means. It's just numbers. And if you can figure out what are some ways that you can maximize the opportunities that you have for phase 2 and post vacancy, and also maximize the opportunities that you may have if you have any other options or have to make other choices, that is okay. And it's all right to decide to use the time that you have in different ways. So we'll talk about all of those things in a second. So Dr. Costello is going to be moderating our panel Q&A. If you have questions, please do put them in the chat. If you are watching us on Facebook or on YouTube, please write your questions in the chat. If you have questions that you want to send us anonymously, you can do so. Write to soblackneuro@gmail.com, and we will read those questions and just say them anonymously without your name, so that you will be able to get your personal questions answered by our panel. So Dr. Costello, like I said, is going to be moderating for us, and moderating with her is Dr. Will McBride. And I'm going to let him introduce himself as well. Welcome, Dr. McBride.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Ray. She said I'm Dr. Will McBride. I'm a second-year neuropsychology fellow with the University of Virginia Medical Center. Full disclosure, with me as well as being in a similar boat. I had some difficulties matching, and so there was a lot of feelings of shame and doubt and things that I went through that definitely rocked my my ego in a sense, because we are all high achieving, slightly type A individuals who have been, we've done well. And so I have been in a similar boat. I can speak to some of these things, but I'm very happy to be here to talk to you all about and help moderate this discussion, because it is needed, and there needs to be a place for these types of discussions. I'm also an executive committee member for the Society for Black Neuropsychology, and I hold multiple hats there. So just excited to be here and help moderate.
Awesome. Well, I will let Dr. Costello and Dr. McBride take it from here. Like I said, we have some people who are experts at this very thing to let you know about how the match works. I know that you have some questions that you want answered, so we'll move into the question and answer period. Again, if you want to write questions anonymously and have them read by our moderators, you can go ahead and send those to soblackneuro@gmail.com. We'll retrieve those and have the moderators read those. Or if you want to share your questions on the YouTube feed or on the Facebook feed, you can do that as well. At this time, I'm going to allow our moderators to go ahead and introduce the people who are going to be your expert panel for this evening.
All righty. So now we'll, like she said, we'll introduce the panelists who join us today. We first have Dr. Greg Kylan. He is the past training director at the University of Texas at Austin Counseling and Mental Health Center. And he's also the APIC match coordinator. So we have him. I remember seeing his emails constantly throughout that process. And I was like, that sounds like a very interesting job and role. So we have him here with us today. And let's see if we can get him on there we go. Hello, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm in Texas, so it's been a little cold here, but I'm fine. So thanks.
And did I say that correctly, Dr. Kylan?
Yeah, you did.
Good. All righty. Well, we're happy to have you here.
Thanks.
We also have Dr. Pamela Dean. She's a board-certified clinical neuropsychologist at Puget Sound VA Hospital in Seattle, Washington. She is also an assistant professor in the Department of Psychiatry and Behavioral Sciences at the University of Washington. She also holds a number of different hats with the Society for Clinical Neuropsychology chair, the Education Advisory Committee. She has been in that role for some time. She is also the co-chair for the SCN Program Committee. And she also serves on the American Academy of Clinical Neuropsychology Publications Committee. And she also does a number of other things in terms of board certification. So we're happy to have her here with us as well.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you for having me.
Alrighty, great. So Rosalie, I think we were thinking about we were going to do questions. Some will be directed towards you, Dr. Kylan. Some will be directed towards you, Dr. Dean. And then we're going to, of course, just get your general input. When you do feel that you have a great answer, please feel free to chime in. This is going to be a great discussion, great dialogue, and I'm sure we're going to think of plenty of questions as we go along. So Rosalia, take it away.
Sure. So this first question is really for either of you. In terms of the emotional aspect of not matching that we were discussing, how would you encourage students to process the experience and care for their mental health during this phase? For example, if you were providing reassurance to a trainee who did not match, what might you say?
Would you like to start? Should I start?
You go ahead.
Okay. For me, I think the most important thing is that this is not a referendum on you as a human being, as a up-and-coming psychologist. It just isn't. There are so many different factors that are at play here. This was a tough year, as I think others have mentioned, in terms of we had a number of or more students coming into the match this year. That made it more competitive. You're also in a competitive subfield, and it just makes it that much tougher. So there are just so many different factors at play, and to take this in a real personal way is just something I don't recommend doing. It's a blip in the road, a painful bump in the road, but you keep going and you move on and you be successful moving forward. And that's been my experience with people who run into this.
And I can add also from my experience, just to echo a lot of what we've already heard here today. I didn't match for internship my first time out as well, back in 2008, I think it was. And, clearly I feel like my path has been successful, and it was a really big hit. I felt like I was well prepared. I had already defended my dissertation. What could be there? And it is a really big hit. So it's okay to feel really upset. It's okay to feel disappointed, and to just be there with those emotions and reach out to people who provide you with that support, whether it's a trusted mentor or supervisor, faculty member, other people, maybe, trainees in your cohort, friends, partners, whoever that may be, to get that support in this immediate moment. The sting is initial and it can feel insurmountable, but you will be successful. You will get through this. And having the right, and I think this is probably going to come up, as we go through this, but having guidance and mentorship is invaluable to help you through this. And it is a bump in the road. And I think one of the things that has been really important to me is to show trainees that our path to success is not linear. We've heard this so many times, but we think of our mentors way up here and that they just flew up to these levels. And when you have a conversation with them, you find out that they didn't match for internship, or they didn't match for postdoc, or they didn't pass the ECCP the first time, or through board certification, one part or another didn't go through. And so I think it's really important to normalize this, that it's not you, that there's other things that can maybe help us figure out how to move you forward to be successful in the next phase.
Completely agree. Thank you both. It's validating to hear that even now, being a couple years out from it. So I hope that listeners feel the same. Will, did you want to, or Dr. McBride, did you want to transition to the next person?
Sorry, let me unmute myself. So yeah, and we're actually getting a ton of questions through the chat as well. So I'm kind of going through and getting those, but please keep those questions coming. So in terms of our next question, for Dr. Kylan, and this could be, summarize it how you must. Can you explain to applicants what exactly happens in phase 2? Talk to us about the various stages, starting with the application and what happens in each stage. And then, we can go through the clearinghouse, and then match versus non-match with phase 2. And then ultimately, how do you recommend applicants prepare for these interviews?
Okay, see if I can get all of that. Basically, phase 2 is an accelerated version of phase 1. So we have an application period, which we're right in the middle of, and I really, really hope that everybody who's listening has already submitted all of their applications, or will finish that by tonight, because they only have until 11 o'clock Eastern time tomorrow to get those applications in. Sites cannot view them until tomorrow afternoon, but everybody's the submission of applications gets cut off at 11 Eastern tomorrow. There are certain sites that will choose to extend it because they feel like maybe they don't have enough applications, but you really can't count on that. So if you are interested in applying to a site, make sure it happens tonight. Then there's an accelerated interview, application review phase. The sites go through their applications quickly. They contact people, set up interviews. That's about 2 or 3 weeks. And then the same thing that happened at that point, or for phase 1, is that there's a ranking deadline. There's a week that you get to wait and be on pins and needles again. And then match day is the end of phase 2. And again, just like it all happened in phase 1. Now, if you don't get matched in phase 2, there is what's called the post-match vacancy service, which is a very, very different, it's structured very differently. Basically, it's almost like a bulletin board of positions. You don't use the API to submit applications. You simply download a PDF copy of your application and send it in through email. And they contact you. They may set up an interview. They may make you an offer right then and there if they like your interview, or they may take more time. It's kind of a little bit more of the Wild West. It's a little strange because phase 1 and phase 2 are so organized and so by the rules, step by step, and the post-match vacancy service is much less formal in that way. Now that goes through the end of October, actually. Now nobody wants to wait that long, but the reason we leave it open is because sites get funding over the summer, sometimes even into the fall. They get last-minute positions, so we want to leave that available for people to be able to, to apply if something comes open more at the last minute and they're still not matched. So I think I missed a question or two in there.
Well, to add to that, and that information is really helpful. Is there a different way that students should prepare for these types of interviews, or should they go about it the same way that they went about phase 1?
Okay, thank you. Well, yes and no. I mean, there's not necessarily anything different about the interviews during phase 2, but if you found yourself unmatched, which of course many of you did, one of the things to really ask yourself is, how are my interviewing skills? What do I know about my interviewing skills? Because one of the things that I learned as a training director is there are some graduate students that are wonderful clinicians and researchers and teachers and all kinds of other things, and their interviewing skills are fair. and they're not presenting themselves and their skills and their interests in the best light. They may think they are, but they aren't necessarily doing that. So what I would say is, particularly if you had a number of interviews this time and you found yourself unmatched, I would talk with a mentor, someone who knows, hopefully, about what interviews are like with internship sites, and do some mock interviews. Ask them to interview you just like you are interviewing for an internship program, and to give you honest, direct feedback about your strengths and your weaknesses. And I find that is really, really important at this stage, is that kind of practice. So I'll stop there.
Okay. Kind of another follow-up question with that is, and from the chat, what was the match imbalance this year? If you could speak on that, or how much of that was impacted by, extraneous factors that were not.
Whoops. I lost him. I didn't hear. What was that about the match imbalance?
So he was asking Tia to speak a little bit more about the match imbalance this year.
Okay, sorry, I didn't hear the end of that. So, well, what happened this year is we had about 250 more applicants than we've had in the last few years. And at the same time, we had about 100 fewer positions than we've had recently. And so probably most of you have heard, if you go back 10 years, we had a horrible, horrible imbalance. And that has improved. And over the last 3 or 4 years prior to this year, things were in pretty good shape. But this year we had more students and fewer positions. So to the tune of about 350. And that is significant. It really is. And it does affect the experiences of students in the match and in phase 2. It makes it more difficult, to be honest. I'm not trying to portray that as, you can't overcome that, but it is a factor. It is something that is there. So.
Thank you for that.
And I was going to say, if anybody wants to see the stats, there's a match stats page on the APIC website that has more numbers than you could possibly want to see.
Okay. Rosalia, I'll hand it off to you.
I see a question here in the chat that I think is kind of a follow-up to our how do we prepare for these phase 2 of interviews. They're saying, both my DCT and neuropsych professor previously viewed my cover letters in phase 1. Now they are saying I need to make changes. I was told the reason I did not match and prior to that did not get a lot of interviews was due to my cover letters. So what are some of the things that someone should always say in their cover letters?
I think I can speak a little bit to that. And reviewing these is that, first of all, I think it's important to know, to think about your program itself. And I think that some programs may be weaker in certain subject areas. So for example, a program may be an excellent clinical program, but may have weaker curriculum and supervisors when it comes to neuropsychology, which is one reason that trainees may reach out for outside mentorship to some of these other organizations. So that's one question, is the familiarity with the field in general and the internship process in neuropsychology. Sometimes I think one of the things that comes across is that at this stage, we're like a kid in a candy store, and there's so many wonderful things that are being offered at these internship sites, but they may or may not be a good fit for what my experiences have been or what my long-term goals are. And, one of the things that I think is important to make sure to include is that your cover letter matches the site and what it has to offer. Because you may have excellent experience and want to get, say, for example, maybe you want more experience in epilepsy, but the site itself doesn't offer that experience, and that's going to be a mismatch. So looking through the program, you can look online for the internship programs or email the training director if you can't find it. But look for what the internship rotations are, what the program has to offer. make sure that you're tailoring your cover letter to that so it's a good fit right off the bat.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more, and I can't emphasize what you just said enough. You can be the best graduate student in the world, but if your cover letter says to me that you're not a good fit at my site, I probably won't offer you an interview, no matter how amazing you are. So that idea of really understanding what a site has to offer and presenting yourself, highlighting the things that are interesting to that site are essential in a cover letter. So you can't send a generic cover letter. In other words, you can't send the same cover letter to every site. That's not gonna work. Yeah.
And I think to piggyback what you were saying about your interviews and how to prepare, a lot of these, when you have a lot of different interviews, it can blur a little bit with where you're interviewing and what the site has to offer. So make a cheat sheet before your interviews and have kind of the main points. Who are the main supervisors? What are the main opportunities? Why are you interested? Because when you go to interview, if you don't have that information and you can't speak in a more detailed way during your interview, it's going to sound similar to the cover letter, very generic, and there's going to be a question of fit.
Yep.
That's a really good tip, and have been kind of told to balance, highlighting how your previous experiences make you a good fit, and also how what the site has to offer can kind of fill in those gaps and areas for growth.
Right.
Someone also asked specifically, do I need to completely rewrite a cover letter if I'm going to reapply for a site where I previously had an interview?
Well, first of all, it is fine to reapply to a site that has an opening in phase 2 into which you already applied and didn't get matched to. It's totally fine. The worst that can happen is that you won't get matched there. But I do know a lot of training directors will take another look at people in phase 2 who have applied in phase 1 because they know you're really interested in that site. And so that's a real plus. So I would say if you're still interested in the site, you see them in phase 2, absolutely apply. I don't know if it's really necessary to rewrite it. As much as, if you feel you can improve your cover letter or letters in general, then do so. But I don't think you need to do that necessarily just because you're reapplying to the same site.
I do have one follow-up kind of question and I just lost it. I'm so sorry. So I know what it is. No, I just lost it again. I apologize. If your assessment hours are affected by COVID-19 and you've had practicum shut down, how would you address that in your application materials?
Cover letter. Yeah, I know. Just let, and that's actually another thing you can do. And I'm glad you triggered something, is that if you've had other experiences since you applied in phase 1 and sent those cover letters out, now you can't change the core of your application, but if you've had other experiences that you want to highlight, that's a great place. Cover letter is a great place for that to happen as well. So anything you want to explain, anything out of the ordinary, that's all in the cover letter, for sure.
And with regard to hours, everyone's in the same boat. Everyone's hours took a huge hit. Some places still have not returned to doing face-to-face evaluations, neuropsychological evaluations. So programs understand that. And, every program has a slightly different lens in which they're viewing an application. But I think that is one where everyone understands the last year has been really challenging for trainees to get good quality face-to-face experiences. And so, there's other things that are being evaluated in your application as well.
Right.
Okay. Thank you. Soliciting feedback from sites that you interviewed at, or is that okay?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I often encourage students to do that. So one way to think about things, the average student applies to about 15 sites and gets an average of 6 to 7 interviews. So if you got, say, 3 interviews, that's an indication that there's maybe something in your application that might need to be tweaked. On the other hand, if you got 9 interviews and you didn't match, that's an indication that maybe the interview is more of an issue. But either way, it is absolutely fine to contact the training directors at the sites to which you applied in phase 1 to ask for feedback. Now, I will tell you that in my experience, people tell me that the response is mixed. Like, I talked to somebody on the phone today and she told me, yeah, I emailed them like 8 people and 2 days ago, and I haven't heard back from any of them asking for feedback. It's usually not that bad, but you're going to find a mixture of willingness to do that for various reasons. What you can do is, I would say, be persistent, maybe ask a second time, acknowledge that they're busy, but see if they're willing to help you out with that, or ask your DCT or another trusted faculty member to reach out on your behalf, and they may have a little bit more luck. So, but again, there are many training directors who are more than happy to do it, and recognize that it's very hard to get feedback about this process. But there are some that are hesitant or don't like giving feedback or whatever. So, or are told by their HR departments that they're not supposed to do it.
I think that's a really important point too, is that, it can be a little bit of a sticky situation. And so not to take that as a personal reflection of you, if you're not getting, great feedback. The training directors at these sites, many of them go back and it takes time. They're reviewing the application. They're looking for, what was it about this applicant? Maybe there wasn't anything in particular. It was just, as you're ranking 15 programs, you have one that's number 1 and one that's number 15, all of which you would be happy to go to. But then there's that one that just fell off, the mark. And it's the same thing for how programs are ranking applicants. And so I think that's right on the mark, that you certainly can reach out to them, but don't take it as a personal offense if you're not getting really detailed feedback or information about your application. And it may be more advantageous to then reach out to work with a mentor who can then also, again, knows the field and can look at your application materials and help guide you should you decide to kind of hold off on this and go for the next, the later phases of this.
I think as we're talking about this kind of, how to reframe cover letters and how to go about this phase 2, there's a question in here that says, last year I applied to several sites for internship, but I did not receive any interviews that fully met my goals. I added an additional year to my program and attempted to boost my CV and experiences as much as possible in the face of COVID. I focused on areas that were areas of growth noted by sites that I did not receive interviews at last year. This year I received more interviews, but still did not match in phase 1. I feel very defeated, as the only feedback I have received this year is that being in a general doctoral program was seen as a disadvantage compared to candidates in programs with neuropsychology tracks. This is not something I can change. I'm wondering what your suggestions are to becoming a more competitive candidate. I have gotten closer to target, but I'm still missing the mark.
Yeah, that would be really frustrating. I think the first question I would have is, again, what readiness your program has provided for that match for sites to what your experiences have been in practicums. And it sounds like you were able to get feedback from some of these sites and did increase your interviews. But again, and you're going to hear me say this over and over again, that having a mentor through one of the professional organizations that has kind of a more broad, overreaching understanding of not only neuropsychology, but board certification and the process through postdoctoral fellowship and moving on into the profession, that is truly invaluable. And it can sometimes be helpful to step outside your program. Even if you have really great mentors in your program, it can sometimes be helpful to step outside that and have that impartial view and feedback. So that might be a helpful next step if you haven't done that already.
I don't have the experience in the neuropsych area to probably be very helpful, other than to say, hang in there, be persistent. One of the things that I do in my job as match coordinator is I talk to a lot of students and I hear about their experiences, and you stay at it and you keep at it and you keep at it, and you will be successful. That's what happens. Sometimes it's just a matter of tweaking along the way and figuring out what's going on and getting to the point where you need to be. So that's the best advice I can give. It's easy to feel completely defeated, and I totally understand that. And at the same time, you have to move forward, and you have to be able to go to those interviews and be excited and be interested and convey that and summon that aspect, those feelings inside yourself, even though you may feel, really bad. But there's a payoff to doing that, because students, they hang in there, they get matched, and it just can take some time.
And I think, just to speak to the general doctoral program, again, there's a lot of really great doctoral programs out there that don't have neuropsychology tracks, but that offer the curriculum and then the supplementary experiences through the practicum and externships that will prepare you to be a competitive applicant for internship sites. So again, the question of fit comes up. Perhaps the goal is here, but the experiences, there's a mismatch in where those experiences are falling, and figuring out what that mismatch might be might help to move forward.
I think I'm hearing throughout kind of this theme of the dialectic, right? Both are true in this process. One, that it feels defeating and it's emotionally really tough, and two, that we need to kind of behaviorally activate and persist and keep moving.
Right.
I'm going to shift a little bit to another topic. So in thinking about which sites to rank or not rank in phase 2, certainly each applicant will have different goals and different priorities, but can you discuss some of the potential pros and cons that you would encourage applicants to consider for each site? So for example, if they are pursuing a career in neuropsychology, would it be more beneficial to accept a non-neuro internship site that is APIC or APA accredited? Or would it be best to take another year of training and reapply to internship the following year?
So I can speak from the neuropsych piece. If you want a career as a clinical neuropsychologist, it's going to be really important to weigh what your long-term goals are. To be a clinical neuropsychologist, that includes getting a 2-year postdoctoral fellowship. To be competitive, to have a 2-year postdoctoral fellowship, you need to have completed an APA accredited internship. And within that internship, have some level of neuropsychology training, whether it's in a track or not in a track, it doesn't really matter, as long as you're getting well-rounded clinical psychology training and having that neuropsychology piece. So looking at the sites, you have to ask yourself, is this site going to help me meet my goals? And that's a really important one, because if your goal is to be a clinical neuropsychologist, then taking an internship site to check that box off, maybe it's not going to help you get to the next phase. It will help you complete this one, but it will be much harder to get through to the next one. There's also things to consider in terms of where you're at in your life and what your priorities are. So weighing all of those different things is going to be really important. But keeping your goals in sight and how you're going to get from A to B is going to be a big one. The other thing in that is, if you haven't completed your dissertation, this is a great opportunity in this year to finish that dissertation, try to get a presentation or a publication out of it. Sometimes that's another gap in somebody's application, that they haven't been there. And that's also going to set you ahead of the mark when it comes to postdoc applications, because now that is completely done. You can say, I'm defended, it's done. And that can help boost your competitiveness for the next phase.
Yeah. From the match perspective, as you make these decisions, it is very important that you do not rank a site that you do not want to be at. And I can't emphasize that enough. So if you go through this process over the next few weeks and you interview and you really decide that a particular site is not going to meet your training needs and get you to where you want to be, don't rank it. And I don't care what you get told. I don't care whether your faculty feel like you're going to mess their numbers up, or who cares. Don't rank a site you don't want to be at. And so really it's going through and looking at all the sites where you interview and making a decision. Am I willing to commit to that site for a year? Am I ready to do that? And again, for any site that's not what you want, remember, if you get matched there, you can't change your mind. So I've talked to people who, rank something number 10 that they're not really interested in, but they think, oh, well, I won't get matched there anyway. And then they get matched there. And it's devastating because it's not something that you can just back out of. So yeah, make sure that the programs that you rank are programs that you want to be at.
To follow up on that, one of the questions in the chat was, do you have any sense of what students may expect if they go through the match again next year, whether it be more or less competitive?
I wish I knew. I don't. I have no idea. I gave up predicting a long time ago because I got into the prediction business and it just made me look foolish because I was wrong. So I really don't know. I didn't expect this to happen this year, honestly. We'd actually been in a pretty good place over the past 3 or 4 years, and then we had this change. So I just don't know. I just don't know what to say.
Another related question. If a trainee is applying to a site, that maybe meets some of their needs, maybe has a small neuropsych component, do you encourage them, but it's, less than 50%, less than Houston Conference would suggest, would you encourage them to kind of ask whether that's flexible, ask of their interviewers whether they can possibly bulk up that neuropsych experience to kind of better meet their needs, or what other tailoring they could do to meet their professional goals? I think that's okay.
Let me answer generally and then turn it to you for a more specific answer. Anything you don't know about or you want to know more about, you ask. And that's a perfect example of that. If you're not sure about a site, get your questions answered, email the training director, answer them or ask them on the interview, whatever. Don't be shy about asking questions. You need to know these things in terms of making very important decisions.
And I think neuropsychology can look very different. It can look like research. It can look like getting experiences in a department of rehabilitation, or it can be your typical outpatient neuropsychology setting. So if it's not clear, like you're hearing, ask for clarification. I don't think it hurts to ask, but programs do generally do a pretty good job of spelling out what the experiences are that are available and offered. And there may be little wiggle room for doing things like outside of their site, but you never know unless you ask.
Okay, thank you. We've been talking about the importance of having someone who's a mentor and kind of helping reformulate those cover letters, or thinking about gaps to fill. So some of our applicants who did not match may already be connected to an identified mentor, and some may not. So there are some specific mentorship programs, like the one through SBN that I know Dr. McBride will talk about in a little bit. But for our panelists, how do you encourage trainees to rely on their mentors during phase 2 and beyond? What kinds of questions do you think they should be asking of their mentors? Or alternatively, if they don't already have a mentor, how do you encourage that they go about identifying one?
So in neuropsychology, the AACN, or the American Academy of Clinical Neuropsychology, has a Student Affairs Committee, or the SAC. That SAC has a mentorship program. All of the people who sit on that mentorship program are board certified clinical neuropsychologists. So they have an understanding and appreciation of the field from graduate training all the way through postdoctoral fellowship and then into the career phase. And they are self-identified as wanting to be mentors and serve in that role. So you can contact the American Academy of Clinical Neuropsychology Student Affairs Committee. Or you can look on the website, and there's a form you can fill out to be matched with a mentor. And then it's up to you and your mentor to talk about how often you're going to meet, what your goals are, and kind of take it from there. So it's all very much individualized to what your goals are, what your needs are, and establishing what that mentorship relationship is going to look like in the beginning. And also, what is that going to look like when your goals are met? And so there's no awkwardness in, okay, what do we do now? I think I've met my goals. Like, how do I end this? That's all discussed at the very beginning.
I don't know if this is appropriate for the process that you just described, but I would interview people because I think that connection, that trust and the relationship is such an important part of mentorship. So if there are different people you can talk to, again, I don't know if that's really part of that process, but it'd be great if you can do that.
I think, not to interrupt you, I think mentors come in all different shapes and sizes, and you can have more than one mentor. You can have a supervisor that you've worked with, that you feel very comfortable with, that you identify with, that you can feel vulnerable with, and who has taken on that role for you. And you can also have somebody, through this program doesn't necessarily do an interview. They try to match the people who have signed up to be mentors with the applications for the mentees. But also understand sometimes it's not a good match, and there's no hard feelings if you want to go back through that process. Right. But to your point, you could have other mentors as well and talk to them. Do you feel that you can help guide me through this process? Do you feel that, this is something that, and you can have that negotiation if there's somebody that you've worked with that you feel that can be helpful.
Yeah. And don't hesitate to reach out to people that you've met or that you look up to or that you've had experience with. Very quickly, I got approached by a local high school student to be her mentor, I guess, in the fall semester. I was so honored, and it was really a very cool experience. I enjoyed it. I appreciated it. So you can feel shy about doing it or feel like you're asking a lot, but in fact, being a mentor is something that's a really cool thing. And so I think you hopefully can feel comfortable in approaching people for that.
Okay. So, the plug for mentorship is so important, and we want to take the time, as we're wrapping up, and we want to give you all some time to just give us any final thoughts. There are a number of organizations out there that are affiliated with the field of neuropsychology, student organizations that provide mentorship services and things of that nature. So I think that it's good, and we want to plug those mentorship programs. One of them is Neural Network through NAN, and I'm going to be putting a document on SBN Twitter and through the chat as well regarding the mentorship programs that we have. So Rosalia, if you want to kind of just transition to them, we can kind of do some final thoughts, if that's a good idea.
You want me to talk specifically about the mentor programs?
Let's do some final thoughts first and then we can end with the mentorship programs. Sure.
Any other questions from the chat that you want me to pull? There are a few more in here. Do we have a couple minutes for that?
You know what? I think we do have a couple minutes for that. Let's do that.
So someone asked specifically about mentoring through AACN. Can that be done long distance? It seems like a lot of the programs that are out there are doing that, especially with the way that things have moved this past year, that's an option to meet virtually. Absolutely. You can meet virtually. I mean, even before this platform, I would meet with people, my mentees, just over the phone. So they do try their best to try and match characteristics that are important to the mentee, to the mentor, but absolutely, distance is not an issue.
All righty. So to summarize, to go back again, there are a number of organizations out there, Society for Clinical Neuropsychology and ANST. They have a number of resources. The Hispanic Neuropsychological Society, they offer scholarships for application processes. The Asian Neuropsychological Association is also working on a mentorship, and they also have webinars on mock interviewing to help trainees. the Society for Black Neuropsychology. We have done a number of webinars. We're doing this one tonight, and we've done a number of webinars on interviewing process. And so there is a lot of information, a lot of ways to get connected, mentorship. That's really key and something that we really want to stress, that can be part of that success process. It's a component of it. Division 40 has EAC will be doing a webinar on getting ready for internship. So definitely look out for that. So there are a number of things out there where you can get a lot of your questions answered. And so I implore you to look for those resources and find them and hook yourself up with a mentor. It's going to be really important to your success, and it will definitely take you a long way. Dr. Kylan, Dr. Dean, we thank you for your time. We thank you for giving your knowledge. We want to give you, just a few seconds to summarize your thoughts or kind of share any parting wisdom. And we just really thank you for being able to do this. This was impromptu. We came to you all short notice, and we were like, hey, this needs to be done. But we're so happy that it was able to be done. And I'm very excited about the turnout. The questions that were coming in were spot on. They were targeted, and it was really great to see that people felt that this was a needed discussion. And I hope people feel reassured. So please, any parting thoughts that you might have?
Well, I want to invite anyone who has questions, who wants to talk through their specific situation. If we didn't get to your questions tonight, my phone number and email address are all over the APIC website. It's not hard to track me down. I am very happy to spend time talking about your specific situation, help you think about possibilities, problem solve a little bit. I do that all the time, happy to do that. So feel free to reach out to me anytime.
I would just like to, again, normalize that not making it through one of these steps in your professional career and on your way to your professional career is entirely normal. And there will be other bumps in the road. They sting, and you will get through them. And having mentorship and sponsorship and guidance through different organizations, different individuals that you've had, different supervisors you've had, however that looks to you, is going to be invaluable. But know that this is just a temporary blip in the road, and be persistent. Don't let it get you down.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you both so much. And also reiterating this, does not speak to your worth as a clinician or as a person, and would really encourage everyone to rely on all of these organizations, these mentorship opportunities that have been provided, as well as your colleagues and your cohort mates, that it's nothing to be ashamed of. And, there are a lot of people who are willing to talk about it and help plan for next steps. Some great questions in the chat, great conversation. Very much appreciate being able to have this.
Thanks.
All right. I just wanted to say thank you so much again. We have seen so many different people who have said, both in our email and on the chat, that they really, really appreciate you guys giving of your time and sharing that valuable information. We really do appreciate you guys. And for those of you who did not get your questions answered, again, we have the APIC matchmaker, that you are welcome to. I didn't put it out there. He volunteered.
Please don't start singing. Matchmaker and all kinds of things.
The matchmaker, make me a match, right? Mm-hmm. So he has volunteered to give his expertise to those of you who have a very specific question if it wasn't able to be answered right now. And we also just want to thank you, Dr. Dean, for sharing information about very specific neuropsych information. So thank you guys again for that. Right now, we just want to spend some time just letting you know again about some of the resources that are available. Dr. McBride talked about the SBN mentoring program. Dr. Dean talked about the AACN mentoring program. You can find information about that on the AACN website. Dr. McBride, can you tell us a little bit about how people can get involved with the mentorship program through SBN?
Yes, absolutely. So we have a pretty heavy, we have our website, so societyforblackneuropsychology.org. You need to be a member. So we want you to be a member, and it's free to sign up to be a member. And so if you're
there's a suggested donation price.
There's a suggested donation price.
I will tell you.
Yeah, there's a suggested donation price. But we want we're an inclusive organization, so we want students, trainees to join. I'm working with some of our student mentors to develop the program, and so we have a number of mentors ready and waiting. We're actually collecting or trying to get more mentees at this point. So we're very excited about the things that we want to offer. In addition to some of the webinars that we put out, we want to do more. We want to have direct mentorship where you and the mentor set up a time, set up how you want the mentorship to look like. What phase you are in dictates a lot of the issues or the things that you're going to be focused on. So we want to be able to provide you with that. We want to also be able to provide materials for preparing for internship, for preparing for grant writing, for research proposals. So anything under the sun related to the practice of psychology and towards neuropsychology, we want to be able to help provide. And then also just a space for students to talk about issues related towards, matriculating through the graduate process. We've all been there, and so there's hurdles after hurdles, and it never feels like it's going to end sometimes. But it's good to be able to have a mentor to help guide you and say, hey, this is how I did it. Don't make the same mistakes I did. Here's another way to do those things. So check out our website. Also, our Twitter. We have, like I said, we had a very heavy presence on Twitter, and so we've put links to the Google Docs that you can fill out. We also have a listserv that is all available through our website. So please visit us at societyforblackneuropsychology.org to just check that stuff out.
Right. And we have a Facebook page. If you're watching this on Facebook, you already know that. And if you're watching it on YouTube, then you already know that this YouTube channel exists as well. So subscribe, like, comment, and share these videos. Also, we want to make sure that we give ANTS the opportunity to tell us about some of the things that they have done. Emily is here. I want to make sure that she gets a chance to talk about some of the things that ANTS provides as well. I know that you guys have a listserv, and recently you put out a listserv that had a ton of resources on it. Can you tell us just briefly a little bit about ANTS? How do we get on the listserv? How do we make ourselves able to get some of these resources that ANTS has?
Absolutely. Thanks again to Society for Black Neuropsychology. We love partnering with you. And this is, you guys have just done a phenomenal job. I think this was incredible. To be a member of ANTS, we welcome all neuropsychology students and trainees. We're actually the largest neuropsychology student trainee organization in North America. So if you're not involved, you're missing out. You got to join. And it's really only $10 to be a student member. And what you need to do is you need to join SCN, Division 40 of APA. And as soon as you're a member of Division 40 of APA, you're a member of ANTS. And all you have to do is sign up to be on the list, and the instructions are on the website of how to do that. So our website is scn40.org. And if you go to ANTS part, you just go /ANTS, Association for Neuropsychology Students and Trainees. We also have a strong presence on Twitter, and our listserv is really kind of a main hub that I think students really rely on to get kind of the most up-to-date information on late-breaking opportunities, especially for internship and postdoc, getting support, getting connected to all those resources. And we have a really rich and wonderful relationship with all of the other neuropsychology organizations. So we try to share the resources and the wealth as much as possible across those organizations. So please, if you're not in the loop, join us as soon as you can.
That's right. And so we have, and just like we've said all along, there are so many different places that you can find information at. If, like I said, SBN is always welcoming anyone who wants to be a member. You can also find information from the Asian Neuropsychological Association, ANA, and also the Hispanic Society for Neuropsychology, HNS. And we want you guys to make sure that you get all of the information that you need so that this process can be one that is a smooth process, or as smooth as possible for you. And when you have a hiccup, know that you're not alone. Know that there are people here who are willing and ready and able to provide advice and to help you out. Once again, we want to thank all of the people who participated, and thank you to our moderators as well. Thank you so much, Dr. Costello and Dr. McBride, for your moderation. I really appreciate you guys. You tackled some of those very long questions very well. We thank you so much for that. This will not be our last webinar, guys. We have one more about Match specifically. If you know somebody who was applying for fellowship and they participated in the Match process there and they were not able to match, don't despair. Tell them to come on Sunday. If you thought that this was valuable for internship hopefuls, then Sunday will also be valuable, I'm sure, for those who are hopefuls for the fellowship process as well. So we want to make sure that all those who need the information are able to get that information. So it will be Sunday, same channel. So wherever you are watching this, whether on Facebook or on YouTube, tune in there again on Sunday. It's going to be at 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific. And then tomorrow night is the final night for the Society for Black Neuropsychology's inaugural Black Luminaries series. We're talking to individuals who have been prolific in our neuropsychological field and who have been trailblazers in their profession. And so we want to welcome you to finish up the series with us. We have Dr. Desiree Bird tomorrow, and she will be talking to us. And we have had lots of great people who have been in our interview series so far. We had Dr. Mark Norman, Dr. Anthony Stringer, Dr. Jennifer Manley, Dr. Monica Ment, and Dr. Natalie Kelly. And now we're having Dr. Desiree Bird. So if you have missed any of the previous 5 series or 5 installments in our series, we want you to go to our archive videos and click them, watch them, and make sure that you share them with other people who can be inspired by the Black luminaries who were able to join us and share their stories. And come tomorrow at 5 Eastern, 2 Pacific, we will be having the last episode for 2021 with Dr. Desiree Bird right here on the YouTube channel. Thank you everybody for your questions. Thank you everyone for watching. And we hope that you will come back and that you will be able to join us again the next time we have a video that you feel is helpful and that you feel other people will benefit from. Thanks so much. Have a good night.